Welcome back for another serving of Dolewhip and Dreams. As always, I'm your host, Maddie Limerick. Before I jump in, I just wanted to say a few words. We are living in truly unprecedented times, and while this is being prepped for release, protests are being held around the world in response to police brutality and the slaughtering of the African American community by those police. We stand with Black Lives Matter. We support the Black community and the Black trans community who are also fighting a never-ending battle against being murdered in the streets just for existing. We will be making a donation as well as donating all of our Patreon subscriptions for the months of June and July to several Black Lives Matter and protest bail funds to help show our support. I just want to encourage all of you to get up every day and do something that will help. Go to a protest, give money, take water, snacks, and medical supplies to any groups working on the front lines with protesters. Check in with your friends who are people of color. What is happening will take a huge toll mentally on everyone, and it's important that you show your support. I encourage you all to find ways to help in this fight, because your silence is ensuring more countless deaths. At this moment, I would like to take a moment of silence in the memory of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and the countless number of trans people of color who've been taken away too soon due to ignorance and brutality from people who are supposed to protect. Now back to the show. Today we dive into our first Pixar film, and it's the most recent film to date that we've covered, but then when our guest pitched it, I just had to say yes. Coco is the vibrant musical following 12-year-old Miguel, whose passion for music is forbidden by his family. Miguel struggles to uncover the story about his mysterious great-grandfather, whose picture is being left off his family's ofrenda. This leads him to the land of the dead and shows him how important family truly is. The film that would become Coco was first pitched in 2010 around the release of Toy Story 3 by director Lee Ulrich. The story was originally sold as an American child learning about his Mexican heritage while grappling with the death of his mother. I guess it wouldn't be a Pixar movie without a dead mom, right? It was decided that this wouldn't work and lacked the authenticity because at the time, not a single person on the creative team was from Mexico. Again, what a Disney sentence. They wanted to show a real culture and not just a cherry-picked one. The team from Pixar would take many trips to Mexico to help build these characters and fully submerge themselves into the culture, the stories, and the folk art. And they would pull from the history with the bright colors associated with Dia de los Muertos. Ultimately, the film also pulled really interesting storytelling and visual inspirations from Hayao Miyazaki's Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle, and even the action flick John Wick. The casting of this film ultimately became very important, since we know the legacy of Disney and the film industry as a whole has with casting white people as people of color in animated pictures. Coco would become the first ever motion picture, not animated picture, motion picture, with a 9-figure budget to feature an all-Latino cast, with a cost roughly about $200 million. In 2016, the voice cast was announced, and it was absolutely sensational, and the animators used footage of these actors themselves to help bring these characters to life and make them as lifelike as possible. Now, I know what you're thinking. John Ratzenberger is in every Pixar film, right? But he isn't Latino. It was important to Unkirk to not break the tradition, so Ratzenberger was given a small role with only a single line, and that's all he's in the film, but he's still there. Benjamin Bratt, who voiced De La Cruz, was moved when he realized that Disney Pixar wanted to make a story about Latin culture. On the advice of the filmmakers, Bratt watched videos of the equivalent of Mexican actors, including Jorge Negrete and Pedro Infante. Bratt found the character similar to his father in physical appearance, with swagger and confidence, and worked in the film as a tribute to him. The character Mama Imelda's voice was provided by Alana Ubach. Ubach felt the film is giving respect to one quality that all Latin families across the universe do have in common, and that is giving respect and prioritizing the importance of family. Mama Imelda's voice was influenced by Orbach's Tia Flora, who had profound influence in her life. And so she felt that her tia was the family's matriarch, and she dedicated the film to her. And when they eventually found their lead in Anthony Gonzalez as Miguel, they knew he could sing, and so they totally changed the character from just being a guitarist to being a singer as well. As production was rolling forward, the animation department had difficulty animating the skeletal citizens of the world of the dead because they didn't have muscles like their living counterparts, so it was really difficult to make them move in a lifelike and believable way. Pixar wanted to have as much contrast between the land of the living and the land of the dead, and many techniques were used to differentiate the worlds. Color was one of them. Given the holiday and the iconography, Pixar knew the land of the dead had to be a visually vibrant and colorful place, so they deliberately designed Santa Celia to be more muted, said Unkirk. According to Harley Jessup, the film's production designer, Santa Celia is based on real Mexican villages as the production team stayed grounded in reality for the land of the living. Chris Bernardi, the film's set supervisor, said the town was made small so Miguel could feel confined. And Burt Berry, the film's art director, said the aged building materials were used in order to depict Santa Celia as an older, charming city. Coco marks the first musical for Pixar, with songs by Michael Giancha, Jermaine Franco, Adrian Molina, and Bobby and Kristen Lopez. You can thank Bobby and Kristen for hearing Let It Go everywhere you've gone since 2003, since Frozen debuted in theaters. But Bobby is also the genius behind the score for the musicals Avenue Q, Book of Mormon, and Frozen on Broadway. And the original song, Remember Me, in addition to making me sob uncontrollably, won the Oscar for Best Original Song. Much like projects that Bobby and Kristen have worked on before, it's not their fault. You should listen to all the cut songs from both Coco and Frozen. They are really awesome. The story changed many, many times and even included one version where Miguel's family was cursed so they have to sing instead of talk. As sometimes happens, Coco was released in an oversaturated market of November-December blockbusters like Justice League, The Last Jedi, The Star, Ferdinand, and Thor Ragnarok. But the company's $200 million investment saw massive returns to the tune of $807 million worldwide in theatrical releases, and an additional $78 million in home video releases, and is the 20th highest-grossing animated film at the time of this episode's release. It was also the biggest animated release in Mexico, and as of November of 2019, the highest-grossing film ever released in Mexico. More importantly, it was universally praised by critics and fans alike, and has a 97% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes. But as many Disney movies do, it contained content that needed to be censored out of the Chinese market, but when it was screened and they saw how good the film was, it was given a pass and allowed to show unedited. This would also mark the first Pixar film since Toy Story that was not accompanied by a Pixar short. Instead, it was presented with a 20-minute mini-movie called Olaf's Frozen Adventure, which follows Olaf around Arendelle, finding out the meaning of this special time of year. But the short kept many people from seeing the film, and made an already long animated feature even longer. So after a lot of fan outcry online, it was pulled from Coco 2 weeks after its initial release. Like many Disney films, this one was not without controversy. The original working title of the movie was Dia de los Muertos, and shortly after the movie's announcement at D23 in 2013, Disney attempted to copyright and trademark the title, which would also copyright the use of that word, which is the title of the actual holiday. There is a huge amount of backlash online, as you can expect from the Mexican-American community, pinning Mickey as Muerto Mouse, who is coming to steal and profit from your culture. I mean, are we really that off? A week later, the trademark was pulled and the name of the movie was changed. Cartoonist Leo Alcaraz was brought on after being a large voice of dissent and making this really great skeletal Mickey Mouse art that I'll share on our social media. He was also brought on with playwright Octavio Salas and former CEO of the Mexican Heritage Court, Marcela Davis Aviles, to be cultural consultants. This, I believe, points right back to the original statement that on that original film team, there was no people from Mexico and no one to actually voice if they were being consistent with heritage and culture and not being appropriate. Coco is available now on Disney Plus to stream in English as well as fully produced Spanish. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, my name is Hans Martin Jr., your real movie critic. If you enjoy discussing upcoming movie news, looking at new trailers, and reviewing the year's hottest movies, then tune in to...
Hey, Hans!
What?
Are you doing the promo without me?
Yeah, I am.
How come?
Because everyone knows I'm the better host of this podcast.
Oh, it's like that, huh? You think you can review movies better than me?
I don't think I can. I know.
Oh, we'll see about that. This is...
The Real Movie Critic
versus... The Cine Guy. Mondays only at CertainPOV.com or wherever you listen to your podcast. We're also on Spotify and iTunes. You're going down, critic.
Bring it on, guy.
Welcome back, Dreamers. Today is a first for Dolewhip and Dreams. I have two amazing guests with me today. Join me in welcoming the host of one of my favorite Disney podcasts, Pod of Your World, Kurt and Rob. Guys, welcome so much to the show.
What's going on? Thanks for having us.
Of course. So why don't you both tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, and kind of what role Disney has played in your lives to this point? I know that's a big question.
I know. I'm
like,
ooh. Kurt, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Sure. So we are recording from the Boston area, and we actually work together. That's how we met. As far as Disney goes, it's always been a part of my life. I grew up in the 90s and in the Renaissance era of Disney. So all the classics, The Lion King, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid, were all a big part of my life growing up.
Mm-hmm. So, that's like me and Kurt. That's our bond, is from Disney movies. Like Kurt said, we work together. So we chat it. Talk about Disney all the time. We're like, hey, let's do this for real. Let's have a Disney podcast. So but we're very different in that sense that Kurt's a straight man and I'm a gay man. So we have very different perspectives on things sometimes. And the things that I pull out of Disney movies or the things that I live for are completely different things that he doesn't care about at all. Like, what are the princesses wearing? Or this was a bad fashion moment. Or why did Elsa put her hair down in Frozen 3?
Things I would never notice.
Yeah. And, but we also agree on the music and all the styling and the art of it. And we're just big kids at heart. And I still love to see Disney movies today. So
yeah. And with Disney Plus, it's been great timing for us to rewatch some of these movies and kind of analyze them from an adult perspective and point out plot holes and things like that we might not have picked up on as a little kid.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we still absolutely appreciate them for what they are. They're a work of art.
Yeah. And part of our podcast, too, is that, we love Disney and, we've grown up with Disney and, there's films that we've seen over and over again. But there's also things that, we've seen 25 years ago when we were kids, and we're kind of watching them now again. And we're like, wait, that Siamese cat song in Little Lady and the Tramp is pretty racist. You know what I mean? So you're seeing them with fresh eyes now, and not how you remembered it as a kid. Or just like I said, there's movies that I've seen, Toy Story I've seen recently, or movies that are on TV all the time. And then so it's kind of having the podcast is really exciting to kind of go back and oh my God, we watched this as kids. This is so bad. Or I forgot about this, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been honestly, when I was kind of brewing up this podcast late last spring, they had just started announcing Disney Plus, and we knew it was coming. There was no street date, and I went, you know what? I think this is a good time to start a movie podcast, because then they're all going to be online and people are going to want to rewatch them. And so I think Disney Plus has really stepped up the game in so many ways, because I think there's no stronger selling tool right now than nostalgia. And so Disney, especially the Renaissance era movies, are so much nostalgia for so many people, which is also why they're like, oh, let's remake them as live action films. For good or bad.
Yeah, right.
But I'm excited about the movie we're talking about today. It's the most recent film that we're doing on the podcast as of now, and it's our first Pixar, but I think this one is one of the most special that we could talk about today. You guys, well, everybody knows already. We're talking about Coco. So you guys pitched me Coco. Talk about why Coco.
I mean, we just like absolutely love it. It's probably, I would say, and this is like so recency bias, like it's so new, but like it's one of my favorites. So, and it's one of those movies that I feel like there's not one thing in it that I don't like. It's just from start to finish, it's so well done. And it's like a different story being told. And I also like it just because it's Pixar trying their hand at being a little bit of a musical. And I think that they broke outside of their box, and that's kind of what I like about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly powerful, and the timing with, everything going on in the world is fantastic, with borders and things like that. Not to get too political. But
get political. Get political.
It's a fantastic film. I'm a musician. I've played guitar for most of my life, and I relate to it in a lot of ways. I didn't have to hide the fact that I was playing guitar and liked music growing up, but it's a great film.
Yeah, this came out when MoviePass was at its heyday, and so I gotta admit, I think I watched this movie about 10 times in theaters. One, because there's something so cathartic. I mean, I think adults don't like to give ourselves permission to cry or things or really feel those cathartic emotions, but we're getting to a point where people are like, no, a good cry is part of self-care, and self-care is important. And so I think I was not prepared the first time I saw this for the amount of emotion I was going to feel. Because I love, early on it was getting a lot of rag for being like, oh, it looks a lot like The Book of Life, which was a movie from several years before, not by Disney, and things, but I loved that movie. And so, I took Spanish in high school like most kids did, but I was always, being a theater artist, I was always so engrossed in the visual aspect of Mexican culture and Mexican life and just art and richness of the visuals. And so for me, that's what drew me to this movie. It's the same thing that drew me to Book of Life. And so I didn't mind that they had tonally something that seemed different, similar, but it's also when white people go, oh, do we need to do those Huertos movies? I was like, yes, let's give us lots. Because we've had how many versions of Christmas Carol? I think we could do a couple more, couple more of these. But I got to tell you, I was not prepared for the animal guttural noises that were going to come out of my body during this movie, because I cried a little bit throughout. But then, just jumping, I'm assuming everyone has seen it, or you have at least watched it before you listen to the podcast today. But the Mama Coco Miguel bit at the end with "Remember Me,"
brutal.
I can't.
It's so sad.
But was so nice is I was not alone in the theater. It was a very packed theater. I went on a Thanksgiving Day. It came out 2 days before. But every grown adult in that theater was having the exact same reaction I was. And for me, I think a lot of this movie really connects in the same way of In the Heights, which is the Lin-Manuel Miranda musical. Movie's coming out this summer. But it's that idea of family and connection. And as a queer person, I think sometimes a little bit of a different connection to family. This idea of chosen family versus blood family. But this idea of family and connection was just so stirring and so moving to me at the end of the day that that thematically, I had never... There's always family and there's always that connection in a Disney movie, but just showing the richness of bond and showing it beyond into a non-religious afterlife, I think was a really important aspect of this movie.
I think
that's a good point.
Sorry, I feel like I'm jumping
in. Go for it.
To jump in. I think what is beautiful about Coco is that, of course, it's about family, and the very, very much in the beginning of the movie, it's about how his current abuela runs the house the same way her mother ran it, and the same way that her mother ran it, and then and like generationally they follow tradition. But it's very much about family and about tradition and knowing where you came from. But it's also about change and how like younger generations can bring change to even their family and they were so negative towards music, and and that could be like relatable to anything, you know, like you said, as a queer person, like it could just be your sexuality and coming out to your family who's never had to deal with that before, and like now this is something new that we didn't think that we accepted, but it's actually not that bad after all. So there's there's relatability there, whether it's music or it's art or it's, you know, we have a line of kids that went to this college, but now we're going to go to this college instead. You know, people can relate to that just in general with not doing exactly what their family wants. And Miguel he seizes his moment and he goes for it. And he...
Nice.
Yes.
Nice reference.
We like that. So he... sorry, now you threw me off. But he goes for it and he changes his family's mind against like the most resistance he could possibly face too, which is what I love about Coco.
It's really powerful in the sense that you kind of have to decide who you want to be in life, because at the end of the day, people are remembering you for that person. So if you're forgotten, you're gone, pretty much.
Yeah. So, that got me, because there's always a caveat in a Disney movie, and I went, okay, so when dead people are dead, and there's always a dead parent in a Disney movie, and we go to the land of the dead, what happens? And then it was one of those, I was like, what's RuPaul going to pull out this time? But it was, it was in this time when they were like, oh, when you're forgotten and you're not on someone's ofrenda, that like, you're gone. Like you shrivel up. And I was like, oh no.
It's like being canceled.
But I think, it's that kind of gutted me. And I like that you bring up that this was Pixar's first attempt at a musical, because Disney's kind of really been following that traditional path of like traditional musicals in a way that, there might not be 20 songs in a movie, but they use the songs in the same way that you do with a Broadway musical, where the songs are kind of progress the plot. And I like to attribute a lot of that to Alan Menken and Stephen Schwartz doing so much of the Renaissance. But in this, Bobby and Kristen Lopez, who did Frozen, and then did this, which I was shocked that they did this as well. But, tonally, they're such smart writers, because, Bobby wrote Book of Mormon and Avenue Q, and so none of his things are always quite similar, but they've got that same heart. But the score in this, well, at moments it's not music like, Into the Unknown coming out of the plot. The music is still so enriching to the plot of the story, and it's so smart and really captures the culture and kind of the beauty of the folk music. And I think really it's one of my favorite aspects of this movie. The music is obviously the most important part, because it is Miguel is pursuing music, and the music is music is his heart, I believe, is a lyric that he uses at one point. And so I think, God, just the score to this, the combination of the score and the music is just so good. And also, I think it's we can't address a lot of what Disney's done through their legacy without talking about the good and the bad. And I think, despite Disney being a capitalist monolith, even in there can be no ethical consumption of entertainment, I feel, with in the way that it is. But I think this is one of many steps Disney has made to make good for their shitty racist past.
Yes.
And Absolutely. So I think between just an all Latinx cast and writers and everything, like it's so on the nose in so many ways.
Yes. It's good that it's happening. Like, it's good that in the Disney, and not this transcends just throughout, like this through Marvel and Star Wars and everything that they're doing as a company, being like the biggest producer of media, like in America or maybe even the world, they have to set the example for everybody else. So recently they've been casting, more minorities, making more roles for minorities, telling more stories about minorities. I heard that in Oddward they're gonna have the first queer character. So like we're getting there. I mean, it's not as fast as we want it to be. I mean, but it's gonna take time. And
we've come a long way. Even in like 10 years or 15, like 20 years, I feel like you watch movies and you're like, wow, that was pretty cringy. Like,
yes,
it's we're getting there. It's just a matter of time now. And to go back to the music that you mentioned too, I think it's incredible that Coco, a movie about music, doesn't really have much music in it as far as a diverse lineup of songs, but has an extremely powerful soundtrack. And having these different emotional versions of Remember Me throughout the film is so effective.
And it shows you like the interpretation of like one song by different people. It's just beautiful. Like they tell the story of music, and I feel like all the performances in Coco matter, if that makes any sense. Like in a lot of the films, like some of the songs seem like they could be almost like filler, or like they don't really need to be there. But in Coco, like the first time that Miguel performs, like he performs Un Poco Loco in a competition in front of all those people, like the first time, and then like when Mama Imelda sings at the end, you're like, oh wait, she's singing but she hates music, but she gives this like amazing performance with the man that killed her man, and like there's just so many layers. I'm like, this movie, it's like a soap opera, but it's like there's so many layers to the story, and the music just adds to it, and the drama, and just like even like silly songs like Juanita or whatever was it, Everybody Knows Juanita, and like you mentioned before, like When You're Forgotten, like they tell that story in that sense. Like the music is so brilliantly placed in this movie, and it's just like you said, there's not a lot of it, but when it's used so correctly, and like you want more. And I think that's what you want out of a Disney movie or any movie, that you want more. Like I would take a Coco 2 or 3 or 4 because I just love that movie.
Oh, well, when they announced that they would be doing the Coco layover, the mariachi in Epcot and Disneyland, I was both like, yes. And we went, and like, the mariachi is normally really beautiful, and it's fun to have that kind of moment in Epcot or over in California Adventure, because they're two very different tones of parks. But when, even when they didn't have the Miguel puppet out, it was still really beautiful to hear like these insanely talented artists recreating this music that is, written in the performance style that they normally perform in, and have that. And it's so lovely. And I'm so happy it's coming back again this year. Despite Chapek not liking entertainment in the parks now that he is the head of the company. That's another conversation for another time. But yeah, I think it's just so, I immediately went out and was like, well, let's listen to the Coco soundtrack all week, shall we? Let's just do it. Yeah, and I think and the performers they chose were lovely, and the boy who plays Miguel is so wonderful and just kind of heartwarming in his, because he has a wonderful voice, but it's so childlike still. And he has this amazing, like you can hear hope and optimism in his voice, which I think is just so incredibly powerful for the movie, but also it's beautiful, just that optimism that I think we lose in the world today, especially when he's going up against Mama Imelda. And they so quickly, and it's funny, she's so stern that in all the promotional stuff ahead of time, I thought she was going to be the villain. Well, like I figured I didn't actually think Ernesto Cruz was going to play a huge part in the story. And then she's just very stern and very put together looking, and without knowing much about the story outside of before I saw the movie, I was like, oh, I feel like she's going to be kind of the antagonist a little bit.
Just by the character design.
Just by the character design, but she's not. And she has this, they did this great thing where keeping the eyes inside of the skull head design really still let us have so much emotion from each of the characters. Yeah. And they were still broad in the way that only Disney has ever known how to do. Because, like, while DreamWorks does really great work, and, like, How to Train Your Dragons saga is one of my favorite, there's something that Disney animators... It is a magic. It is a glimmer. I don't know how to explain it, but I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. And there's just a magic in how the life that's behind the eyes of all of these characters, despite being dead, that I think is just so beautiful to the story. Because, like, Mama Imelda, when she starts singing the first time, you see so much hurt. You see so much emotion that I think is just beautiful and really lends to the dynamicness of the kind of the who's deceiving who and why people are making what choices they are. Because you can tell it killed her to get rid of music. It absolutely murdered her. But it's still such a huge part of that story.
In that performance in particular, so my husband is from El Salvador, so he's from Latin American background. And we actually took his nephew to see Coco back then, and he's like around Miguel's age, so it's kind of like which is kind of like special to have like a Latin American like child on screen for you to see. You know what I mean? Like have that representation. But also just in general, like when you mentioned the Book of Life earlier, and when Coco came out, I was not super excited because I was like, it seems like they just made this movie. And then when I saw it, I was like, I was so wrong to ever question this movie because this is one of the greatest movies that Disney's ever made. I agree. But I love The Book of Life, and I'm glad that they both exist in this world. But I was so wrong in that sense that I was like, I should be more open-minded for what I see. But to bring it back to the performance with Mama Imelda, that song, La Llorona, it translates to like the crying woman. So that song is basically her just weeping and crying, and like you said, it's her loss of music. That all these years she just gave music up because she was holding a grudge, and her willingness to not be so stubborn, and it's kind of funny that her change in the movie changed the rest of the family's mindset. Yeah. And her stubbornness was also the story was the reason why the rest of the family was stubborn. So it's kind of, in order for the family to change, Mama Imelda needed to change. And I think that that's such a beautiful storyline that they told in Coco. So she's kind of like a side character, but she's kind of holding the whole story together. Like her. So I think I love that scene.
Yeah, and I can absolutely see how you thought she would have become the villain at the end of the movie, because she is the villain at the beginning of the movie. She's the thing that's keeping him from playing music, and you don't know why. Yeah. And Ernesto being a twist villain is actually fantastic. They do a great job with that. Oh, yeah. And it sort of parallels Up, where the hero, the guy that they're looking up to the whole time, is actually the villain of the film. And they do a great job with that.
It's a very Pixar thing.
Yeah.
Yes. They love twist villains. We actually we recorded another episode today.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Princess and the Frog. And
oh yes.
It's a good one.
Yes, we're so excited for that because we love that movie. And we were talking about how Dr. Facilier is just the villain up front, and you know he is. Like, we're like now Disney and Pixar, they live for a twist villain, so they just love the twist. Like you mentioned RuPaul earlier, like just like, what are we gonna do this season? We're gonna do a twist. But with Princess and the Frog, they're like, no, here's the villain. We're showing you right up front, and there was kind of a relief to that. But Pixar does a great job with the twist villain for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's because we're also seeing that move towards there doesn't always need to be like a hugely evident villain. It's the Wreck-It Ralph of it all. It's the sometimes we're our own worst undoing. Yeah. Or in Inside Out, which I thought I was kind of like not like at all. I was like, oh, it'll be cute. I'll see anything with Amy Poehler. But then that idea that like there's no actual central villain to it other than ourselves. And sometimes we get in our own way so much that I was like, oh shit, Pixar, y'all just read me for filth. Okay. All right. I just hurt my own damn feelings so hard. But yeah, I think this way, and even though like now that I've watched it several many times now. It's like, well, obviously Ernesto Cruz is the villain from the beginning, obviously, but it's also that idea of like what we're willing to do for fame and things, which is an old plot device that Disney and everybody else has used. But I think it's beautiful in this story. Because, it is telling several generations worth of stories and how one moment in one generation can affect, especially because for Mama Imelda, it's not even that she lost the love of her life, but her other love, which was music. So her heart died twice in those moments. And so that's, I imagine if I had to completely give up music, because it's always been where for, church, marching band, musical, being a musical theater performer and then working in theater and just having so many friends who are amazing musicians, and just that idea of music had to be taken away from me, I'd die. I don't, there's, it is just a true spark of life. And there's just so much, the visuals, like now Pixar set the standard for kind of visual storytelling, because Pixar helped Disney. Pixar developed technology that was used as far back as Rescuers Down Under. And so like this idea that Pixar has always kind of been in the forefront of the technology Disney's been able to push and use. Mm-hmm. But some of the visuals in this movie are over the top, even for Disney, in such the most beautiful ways. Like the first time Miguel arrives in the land of the dead, and you're just seeing the weird skyscraper buildings and the structure that doesn't seem to work, but it holds everything up. Mm-hmm. And the neon alebrije and all of these things that are just so beautiful. The visuals for me, I think just, it was so weird kind of seeing this and then going back to Toy Story 4, which was beautiful. And, it's such a classic Pixar way, but this is like next level animation for me that I think is just beautiful.
The world building in that movie is just gorgeous. Like the land of the dead, it's just like, in that sense, the Book of Life is shook. Like that.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Like, I'm sorry, the Book of Life is great, but it's like Disney did it better. Like, I'm just like, they came for their wig. They were like, okay, you did it first, but we're Pixar, so sit down.
Step aside.
Yeah, like we got it. Yeah, we got it.
Well, and that's such a Disney thing, because if you've got resources, nobody else would have made this film. Because if we're looking at the pure money, like I was shocked when I pulled up the Wikipedia and saw, because I've been going through the Disney Renaissance on a lot of those things where like $30 million, $40 million for the most expensive. This was $175 million to make this movie.
Wow.
I don't think nobody but Disney would have put that amount of resources into, I hate to say it, into a non-white story.
You're right.
Or a non-specific story. And it's, because even like How to Train Your Dragon, it's big, it's beautiful, but that is intrinsically a very white story and a very, it's Scandinavian, it's from the white Europe. But like this was such a jump that they didn't have to take, and I'm glad they did. And it made $800 million, which is, it was actually only the 11th highest grossing film. It's pretty good. It was okay. I would love to have 807. Humble. She's humble.
Yes.
I'd love, 800 million just kicking around. It'd be fine. But, and especially, and you look at like movie money today compared to like movie money. I did an Aristocats episode that it's kind of premiered by the time we this comes out. But like putting the money they made for that in modern money, they made over $1.5 billion on Aristocats, which is so funny to think about in today money. But like this is like it's so 1970s money to today money it would be about. But even then it was a couple $100 million they made off of it, which was huge.
That's crazy.
But like this, taking the leap, I think, is so important. And honestly, seeing the money that came out of that is very, very important, especially because like a couple months later we had Black Panther. So like, which also broke box office records and showed that like a non-white superhero movie was going to do things that they didn't expect. This was a big play year for Disney that I think really paid off for them.
And And to go back again, like I said, like Disney, they have to set the example, but they're giving the opportunities. But the sad part is I feel like when you're given this opportunity, you have to absolutely kill it, because then you're not you might not get that opportunity again. So they'll make 45 white princess movies because they know that it sells and they're just going to give it the opportunity. But to make a movie, like you said, Coco is a little bit of a risk in the sense of like most audiences aren't going to accept it, and then it kills it, and you're like, what now? You know what I mean? Like, what else can we do? We can do Black Panther. We can have a woman lead Star Wars. We can we can do all of these things. We can have Angelina Jolie be the biggest star in like the Eternals, or like all these other things that they're doing. Like Angelina Jolie is going to be a star of a Marvel movie. Like, that's crazy. You know, like, it's just the decisions that Disney's making are just very refreshing. And it's not just this, like, they could make 14 Frozen movies if they wanted to. They could just give us a new Frozen, and they might. But they are doing these other projects. There's a new one that's coming out soon. I can't remember the name.
Soul.
No, it's
it's
the dragon one.
Right. I forget what it's called.
There's going to be a new like Asian one.
Oh yes.
I forget what it's called, but that's coming out soon too. So like it's good that they're telling these stories, but it's going to push other studios to tell these stories too, which I live for sure. So.
Well, and kind of talking about it too, I think we're about 2 weeks away from Mulan coming out, the live action, which looks awesome because they made it a genre film. Without making like a shitty 1960s kung fu movie, they've like leaned into the aspects of the legend of Mulan. Like, because this week, of course, the articles online have been that Shang was cut for Me Too aspects, for being having the power over her as her, her superior officer and things. But I was also like, Shang's not in the original story, and they're going back closer to the original story.
Okay.
And there could still be another love interest / Mulan doesn't need a love interest. She was the first princess that I went, girl doesn't need a love interest. Shang is a bisexual icon and we love him. We stand him. He is fine. I was a little sad that he wasn't in the film. But, it's also like why Mushu shouldn't be in the film. Yeah. As funny and wonderful as Eddie Murphy was at the time, I don't think you can do Mushu and not be painfully problematic.
Yeah.
But also, like, that story doesn't need that. Mulan doesn't need those tricks. She doesn't need those things. I mean, and so the politics of the actress outside of it, I know that's been a lot for a lot of people. But, like, Disney then went, cool, we've kind of fucked up these other live actions, but let's treat this one as separate and let's lean into it as just the legend and let's tell the legend and the story and let's develop it, which I think is cool. And also, it's showing that the formula doesn't always have to be the formula, and they can deviate some. And even if people don't see it, the people who will see it are the people that need to see it. I think, go ahead.
I'm sorry. To just chime in on the Mulan thing, I think that with these live actions, like, if they're gonna do this movie and you're gonna get another $15, $20 out of me to see a movie that I can watch for $6 a month on Disney Plus, give me something new. Whether it's because it has to be more culture appropriate or whether let's just do Mulan a little bit different this time. Like, I think that's what worked well with Maleficent, that it's not Sleeping Beauty again. It's a different movie.
Right.
And I think, but then the ones, like, I think Beauty and the Beast is like the closest to the original, and I feel like it suffers in that
Lion King,
sense.
almost identical.
Yeah. Identical is like, that's like shot for
Minus
shot.
Be Prepared.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is maybe the best, maybe our favorite song in that movie. So having that
cut.
We want
Talk about queer icons. Queer icons. Scar.
He is
queer icon.
sensational.
Like, sensational news. Like, that's my favorite part for sure. He's so, but no more queer than Jafar. Jafar is.
Oh.
He is. I mean, he's her. He's a woman. He is like straight up like.
Gave gaze.
He's like Prince Ari. Like, he's just like. I love it. Like,
man.
Where are you rolling your R's all of a sudden? Like, he was living for his moment
so
there,
true.
though. He got his power, and he's like, just like any other game, it was like, move out of my way. Like, I'm gonna have a whole routine. I've been preparing this for months. Like, theatrics.
It's true.
The house down. I live for Jafar in that scene because he seized his moment to go back to Coco. I mean, whether we agree with it or not, he went with it.
Yeah, power corrupts absolutely. / why are gay people always the villains? But it's because we're the best villains.
Yes.
I mean, RuPaul, the best villain of all. Sorry, don't come for me.
It's bad that, like, I mean, I want some non-villainous queer characters, but I think we are good at being the villains. Even the ones that aren't queer. Like, I feel like Kurt knows this, that Mother Gothel is like my favorite villain ever because she's so relatable, and the gays relate because they're like, we don't want to get old either, so we're gonna take this girl and we're gonna keep her trapped so we could stay young and pretty.
Can I speak for straight people?
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't want to get old either.
Yeah.
No one wants to get old.
Yeah, but we care about.
Speak for straight people.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say any more than that because
We want to stay pretty. Like, that's the difference.
Yeah.
I
will say I think everybody wants to stay pretty.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is that thing, but it's all, it's one of those things that watching the new live action, and I read an article when I was prepping for kind of our first episodes of, there's something so wonderful about Jafar being as non-masculine as he is, and my friends that are like, but he was gonna marry Jasmine, and I was like, girl, do you know how many gay men have married women for power, money, and safety? Yeah. Like, literally, let's not even talk about how up till 1980 gay men, or 90, that gay men still married women for pure safety. Like, it's it's.
What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say Tom Cruise, but I didn't.
Yeah. Well, that's all. That is another kettle of fish here.
Yeah.
That's a different kind of tea.
For sure. Sorry.
But it's just, I think it's one of those that I think taking us back is like, Disney still fucks up a lot. And despite being a cast member and an avid lover of their just what they do, I think every time they do something good, they take a couple steps back and they'll do just something that's terrible. And you're like, okay, guys, we can still do better. Let's do better. It's like, it's the critique in Onward that it's, Lena Waithe, who is amazing, and she is a queer icon, but having her play like a Cyclops cop, who's not especially attractive in the film, and again, having queer people play police officers, people already like, really, that's the queer representation. The movie's not even out yet, but the gays always have something to say. Gays always have something to say. And the Mary Sue has to have something to write about. So
the way that I feel, the way that I feel about
you're good. Go.
Is that just like, we're not all the way there. So I mean, not that we should like accept the bare minimum, but we should just be happy that we are getting change. Like, this is just the first step of many to come. So we get a queer character. We have a queer actress playing a queer character. We don't have Rami Malek playing a queer character and winning an Oscar. Like, we are getting there. So, I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. So I celebrate all the strides that we make. And I'm not going to criticize them as we go. There's always room to grow, for sure. But when I see something like that, I'm like, yes, let's celebrate it. Like, it's a new win. Like, instead of looking at like what's not being done, like, it's good to look at what's being done at the same time, because there's so much that's not being done that we're just going to drown ourselves. So I'm happy to see it.
Yeah, looking at the progress.
But I do.
That's sort of all you have to do is like, sure, we haven't had as many strong female leads, and they're sort of working to address that. But when you look back at where we come from, like Snow White, like, really, like, that's not a good character. And then also, like, even the Aristocats, like, sure, it's older, but very stereotypical, like, female. Yeah, there's nothing special there.
Right. Well, yeah, and I, reading an interesting article the other day that a lot of my theater actress friends were sharing, that they were like, I don't always need to be a strong female lead. I just want to have a good female character.
Yes, right.
I just want to have a not shitty female character. But, we do need, I think it's one of those that we can still appreciate it, but go, that's the decision you made? Okay, thank you. But let's keep growing. Let's keep, let's keep growing. Let's keep doing better. And I think when we look back, especially looking from like film studies and things, Coco's going to be one of those standout moments of how we look at a great version of representation, and also that they went in and they did their research, and that's why the movie was so expensive, because they spent so much time in Mexico. They spent so much time learning about the music and the culture and all these things. And I'm at a university right now where the questions of cultural appropriation are constantly happening as artists and as theater artists, and kind of what we put on stage and what is okay to teach our students. And it's an argument. I had a faculty member that put, cultural appropriation happens, we just need to deal with it. And I went, I'm sorry, what? What? And so, the fact that we, especially if you're living in a more liberal bubble or a more progressive bubble, you keep going, oh, things are better than they are. But I think this is, again, not to get too far, but I think this is one of those shining examples that we're going to be able to look back on. And I would love to see, I'm not big for Disney sequels as good as Frozen 2 was. I would actually love to see a Coco 2. I would much rather see this than Cars 4 or Toy Story 5. Like, frankly, I would love a second Coco movie. Especially like this idea of, Miguel has a sibling at the end of that movie and is teaching them about the culture. And I think that's so much of what, it's not always, as a queer person, I've always thought it's not my job to teach people, but if people are going to come to me with respect and, the desire to learn, I would love to teach them. I would love to educate them. And so this is an example of filmmakers deciding that they want to honor culture and educate people outside of that culture, and I think they could do even more. And do another set, or do even if they wanted to do a set of shorts that featured Miguel or something for Disney Plus. I think all these things, because we've got Sophia the First and Elena, and you've got Miguel, and you have all these opportunities to do kind of what PBS did in the 90s and educate about a worldview in a non-white way, I think would be really, really smart. And I'm glad this won all the awards. Just at the end of the day, I'm glad it won all the awards. It deserved it. No question in my mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it just hits all the marks. Besides race or culture or whatever. I mean, it's just a great movie. You know what I mean? It's not even this is a great movie about Mexican American. Or I'm sorry, these are Mexican people. They're not in Mexican. They're not in America. This is a great movie about Mexico. It's just a great movie. It's a great movie about family, and it's not a movie about Mexican family. It feels so authentic, and I think it's so relatable to. It's very important for people who are Mexican or Latin American or from Latin descent, but it's a great film for everybody to learn from.
Right.
Not only about the culture, but just about family and tradition and change and music and friendship and all of that and good morals. And that's what I love about this movie is that it's just over time. It's going to age, I think, forever. And it's going to age well. And it's going to, you're always going to be looking back at it and be like, I'm proud that I like that movie still. I don't feel ashamed of liking that,
Exactly.
That's what I love about it.
And I hope Moana falls into that category too. That's another very powerful film. The music is maybe my favorite soundtrack of all time. Lin-Manuel absolutely killed it. Oh my God. Love every single song in that movie. And I relate to that movie so much. And I don't know if you can tell by my voice, but I'm not a Polynesian girl. So it's incredible. I could watch it all day.
We were at Epcot last week, and there was a set of brothers running around. One was in an Elsa costume and one was in a Moana costume, and I was just like, yes, there's so much about this I love. One, just these little boys that are like, yes, I love these characters, they're awesome, but especially because there was also a non-white family, and so seeing I loved Moana as well. I think it was so nice. Granted, of course, a lot of people are like, well, they cherry picked and blah, blah, blah. And, that's going to happen when you're pulling in, aspects of legends together into a story of that are coming from an indiscriminate, a large area of place. But I loved Moana as well. And Moana came out 2 years before this. And so it was in a set of arcing films that Disney was putting out that I went, oh shit, y'all are doing some good work right now. Thank you. that's kind of always go ebb and flow a little bit, but I think there are, just having Lin-Manuel be part of the Disney family now, and he is doing he has put together the most amazing group of Latinx artists in and around New York and LA that are making really amazing art. Anybody that hasn't watched the In the Heights trailer, pause me right now. Go watch it. It's so good. But also just like the sensibility that he brought to the Moana soundtrack. And while it sounds like his work, because he has a very definite sound, it is beautiful. And again, it's one of those that like, who hasn't connected with that idea of Moana or Miguel at some point in their life? And it's also, a lot of what Bobby and Kristen did for this as well, that like it's universally accessible, even if you're not from like a Mexican family, or a Mexican American family. Like, it is something, because family is family, and how we connect together in the grand scheme of the universe is really important to keep in mind. Yep. And so I think, again, like you all said, that is one of the most important takeaways from this movie. Is there anything, I always like to play this game with my guests, and we've kind of already answered this. Is there anything in the plot, anything in the story, just a little bit that you would tweak, or something you would have liked to see them bring back, or do a little more in the script?
I know there's something that you would not like, because we just discussed this last week or 2 weeks ago.
There is, and I don't know how they could really address this, but my take is I find it strange that in the afterlife, you aren't in your prime. So we see Mama Coco at the very end of the film as Bones, very old, decrepit old woman. So what I'm trying to say is, do you feel like the movie is not exactly promoting life? Because the older you get, you're going to live for all eternity as this old, sort of weak skeleton, rather than Hector, who is
a young, spry one,
maybe 30, right? Something like that.
I do think so. There is, and they do this in the animation, where there's a sweetness to how they animate Mama Coco as a skeleton, and that was my one thing too. Also, because Mama Imelda has a very I feel like Imelda looked the same from 20 to her death. Like, she just got a little grayer. Yeah. She's got that lovely Stacey London streak of gray. Oh,
yes. Love the reference.
I think...
Sorry, I'm living.
No, you're good. I love it. I think what it is this idea that, like, with age comes respect, and becomes wiseness, and becomes this authority and a leader of the family. Right. And so I think that they did that to honor honor the life that you lived. And it's like Hector's a little shambly, he's a little rickety, and things, because he didn't necessarily make the smartest choices in life, and things, that he died young, not from his own fault. But so I think there is, if you notice, there's a little more decorum to the older characters who lived their full lives versus the ones who are a little kind of Rick shambly and
well, he also had a lot of unfinished business too. He didn't even know his story. He had to learn it through Miguel's journey too, which is kind of funny, because Hector was in the afterlife, but one didn't know how he got there, didn't fulfill his life there's so many layers to the story. It's so beautiful. I love it so much. So,
and I like, again, I bring up, as someone that grew up in a religious home, I like that they found a way to talk about the afterlife outside of any sort of religious context.
Exactly.
Because I feel like when we talk about the afterlife, it has to be discussed in a religious way, even when you're discussing aspects of Buddhism and things, which is more of a life principle and a life structure versus a religion. But, and despite knowing that it's a heavily Catholic background, they approach it from the aspects of ritual versus the aspects of religion and ritual, which I think was important. But I thought the same thing. I was like, wow, so I'm going to get to the afterlife. I'm just going to be some chubby skeleton. Because I noticed I was like, the fat people are still fat skeletons. The fuck is that about? I was like, I can't wait to either die or be reincarnated. So maybe I'm not fat the next time around. But that was my one thing. They don't know any aspect aspects of life beyond what they actually lived, which is freeing in one way, but also terrifying in another. So that's my one thing for me, I guess, too, is that, like, now, granted, you needed it for the story, but, like, Hector found out things in the same way, despite, and, you know, nobody else, you know, Imelda didn't seem to know anything beyond, Ernesto Cruz didn't know anything beyond, like, you don't even know if you have additional family members.
Right.
Like, that's the one thing that I thought was a little wild,
It's interesting, too, because it might not actually be the age that you die at, but maybe the age you're remembered at. Because a lot of those pictures that we see are actually, like, you see the uncle and you're like, oh, that's actually, like, exactly how they look in the photo.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a good point.
So maybe Mama Coco
yeah.
appears that way. Like, maybe that's not... Maybe it's, like, based on your representation of that person, and that's how they appear to them.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Well, yeah.
I like that.
Well, because she's technically already on the ofrenda as a baby in the picture with Mama Imelda, but that's not where they're remembering her. Well, and that's not how they're remembering her. They're remembering her as, like, this lovely old woman who's always been everywhere. I feel like she's that family member that y'all go, Mama Coco's still alive. She's been old since I was born.
And also,
but, you know, so I think. Go ahead.
Sorry. If I guess if she wasn't that old skeleton at the end, they would pan across and show her, and we'd be like, "Who the heck is that?"
Yeah, that was.
I've never even seen that person.
Yeah, that was going to be my input on it. Was that, like,
it's for us?
It was basically just for the audience to see that. She died, and now she's with her family reunited, and like that's the way that we would recognize her. Because that was what the character
They don't expect people
was.
To read into it.
Yeah, I know. But that's what we do. We overanalyze every single thing. So we just love to do that.
Well, and that's, you know, as adults that watch film with a more than just a general glance, you know, because this is also made for, like, kids to not question anything, and you know, and so I agree with you, but that does also make sense because, like, Miguel sees all of his family as skeletons and knows exactly who everyone is. So, you know, I think that is. Unless it's a weird, like, you die and your skeleton ages backwards and you hit a point where you just don't age anymore. I don't know. It's going to make my head hurt if I think about it too much, frankly. We love this film. It's a great film. Everyone should love this film. I've never talked to someone who doesn't like this film. I think the people who I've talked to that don't like it haven't seen it.
Right.
So, now there has been some speculation since y'all's podcast covers more than just movies. There's been speculation on Coco appearing in the parks. Now, we've had the mariachi, we've had Miguel as the puppets, which are very cool, but there have been two different rumors going around recently. One, that the Grand Fiesta Tour in the Mexico Pavilion will be getting a Coco overlay, which... I don't know about you guys. I think it's kind of cool. I love the Caballeros, but...
Honestly, I think that, like, it's good that Disney kind of, like, unlike Universal Studios, like, they'll change things out so frequently. Disney's really good at, like, we're keeping the classic, but no tea, no shade. That ride at Mexico, nobody's gonna miss it if they put Coco in it. Like, people are gonna appreciate it more if it's Coco. Like, that Caballeros, like, that's, like, nobody's favorite Disney movie. Like, let's, you know what I mean?
It's
so
cute,
it's
but, like,
I mean, we love Donald, but, like, there's plenty of Donalds in the park. Like, we'd rather see Miguel and Hector and, like, all those characters and Dante.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. Though I do love the Caballeros. I think there is a lot of other shelf life for them and a lot of different ways that Disney can utilize them. But yeah, I love the idea of the Coco overlay. Though I do wonder if they're going to be able to get kind of the grandeur and the giant aspects of the film in many ways, because we know how Disney treats overlays and kind of rehashing. I'm not sure they're going to put a ton of money into it, but
then you look at, like,
cool.
Frozen Ever After, and that's actually that's done really well, and it's given the space that they had for the ride in Norway. And there's, like, a fine line between, like, updating these rides to be current films and then also maintaining these beloved historic, like, maybe that's not one of them, but you don't want to see certain things go. Like, the Great Movie Ride was one of those that I'm like, you know, a lot of those things maybe younger audiences don't care about now, but it's still like it takes me back.
R.I.P. Muggsy.
Yeah.
See, yeah, we say that, and literally Mickey's Runaway Train opens this Wednesday. I'll tell you guys how it is. But I agree with you there. Now, if we could get a Coco overlay that's of the quality of the Frozen overlay, I think it'd be pretty good.
Yeah,
definitely.
And like, I think it's beautiful because that ride it's like in the middle of like a restaurant. Like there's like that restaurant that's like connected, and I feel like it's like, oh, you're having a great like authentic Mexican meal in Disney World. For like the thing about like Disney World, like Disney's great because like you go there, and if you aren't exposed to culture, like they have people that are from those countries cooking, and like they try to keep things authentic, and like I just feel like Coco was a very authentic Mexican film.
Yeah.
To put that with like in Epcot, I think it's a little bit more authentic than having like white Donald Duck. Like appropriating like Mexican culture. And, like in my opinion, it's just like Donald Duck is just so American that I'm like, I think it just will suit it better. I think it'll just be more seamless.
Yep.
Yeah.
Personally.
Now, I get why in the 1940s when Caballeros came out that they put Donald with the other two.
Yes, of course. At the time, that was probably groundbreaking. At the time.
Well, I mean, and that was back when Disney was doing the duo movies during the wartime. So they were doing the two short movies and putting them in one. Yeah. But yeah, it's I think now this is another broad rumor. Again, we know how the rumors are. I know nothing about this, but there's a possibility of a temporary Halloween overlay of Haunted Mansion with Coco.
Ooh.
What are your thoughts of that?
So it would be like a day
for Disney World. So think about the Nightmare Before Christmas that Disneyland has, but it would be Disney World getting Coco just for the Halloween month. So August, November.
I mean, I think that would be amazing because, like, you can go see Haunted Mansion anytime. They're not going to change it. It's a classic. Like, they're not going to change it. But to be able to go, like, I've been to Disney World a million times, and I've been on the Haunted Mansion 10 million times. So, like, I would love to go and experience it with something different, and it gives you a reason to go and see something. So I think in that case, there would definitely be less pushback for that.
I think they could do it, but I don't know if it has the right vibe. Like it's a very bright, like I don't consider Coco like a haunted. Like those ghosts aren't bad ghosts, right?
No. They're not. Well, there's lots of stories of the 999 ghosts. Many are nefarious, but that's where I agree with you there is that, like, I'm not sure the tone of Haunted Mansion matches Coco. I'm just picturing coming around a corner, going into a room that's like bright orange, and I'm like, what just happened?
I think I would just have to see what it would look like, and then I'd make my decision. But I like the concept if they can execute it really good. If it's just kind of like, oh, we're gonna just like put a sticker on the wall and like maybe change some of the renders, then no. Like I think it would have to be like a full. But then, do they have the money they have the money, but do they have the time to get that done? And like,
right. Well, and that's my question. Is we're approaching the 50th anniversary of Magic Kingdom next year. Is that the best use of time and money and funds currently?
Like priority, is it?
I mean, Jungle Cruise sprang a leak and sank this week, and the People Mover crashed into each other 2 days, one right after the other. Oh. So I think, I don't know. And again, that is just super speculative rumors. I would love for them to never touch Haunted Mansion. Just keep updating it. But though, where is my fucking Hatbox Ghost? I need a goddamn Hatbox Ghost at Disney World. I went to Disneyland for the first time last year, and I was like, oh, there he is. I've never seen him before. Nice to see you, bud. And there's a big spot for him. There is a big pile of hat boxes right before you go down to the courtyard. That would be perfect to pull a Hatbox Ghost in. But what do I know? So I just, I would love a Coco attraction, like from scratch Coco attraction. I think could be really, really cool because you could do a little bit of a thrill ridey. You could do kind of like they've done with Rise to Resistance or Mine Train, where you combine aspects of a dark ride with a thrill ride that are still family friendly. That I think could be quite cool.
My thing is, do we think Coco is going to have like I feel like for them to make an attraction or something that big, there would have to be some sort of sequel or spin-off or something to keep that current. Because, like, Avatar, very big investment. There are, 4 more movies planned for that whenever we get those?
And like,
Still
Star
waiting.
Wars is, like, timeless, so, like...
Yeah, and that's, like, that makes sense, too. And also, like, Toy Story... They're not wrapping up anytime soon. Like, let's be real. So,
Yeah.
I think Coco is kind of like a standalone. So I feel like its place in like the theme parks will probably be just taking over the Caballeros, and that'll be it.
I can see something like Frozen getting its own big ride, like roller coaster type ride over Coco because of upcoming films.
Yeah, and the
also
success of it.
Yeah. Well, and you've got Frozen is also 2 different international parks are getting Arendelle. They're getting a full Frozen expansion. So I believe Tokyo and Paris. I believe
that sounds about right.
I'm a little rusty. Yeah, I definitely think it is Tokyo, Disneyland Tokyo. Because they're getting it's the Fantasyland expansion that they're getting, I believe. But they're closed currently because of the coronavirus. So here we are. They finally shut down Disneyland Tokyo, I believe, for 2 weeks. They're shutting it down. But Hong Kong and Shanghai have been closed for the better part of 2 months, month and a half. So, yeah, it's a scary little time. But I think Coco could do a sequel. Pixar loves its sequels. But I think because there's already like a little bit of there's displays in the Mexico Pavilion that incorporate the idea of Dia de los Muertos and the ofrendas in an aspect of actual culture with Coco, that I think if they continued that, having an attraction about it would make sense in as like a little boat ride. I think a little boat would be lovely.
So, Maddie, I have a question for you. So, as more of like the parks expert, we kind of more about movies and characters on our podcast.
Yeah.
We don't live close to like Orlando or California to go to the parks all the time. We're not that lucky. So, as more of the parks expert, do you find that either guest or cast members or just people in general, do they hate or dislike the kind of character overlays of these like cultural areas in Epcot, or are they more for them or open? Or because I know like Mary Poppins is coming to the UK and stuff like that. So,
yes, I'm super excited. So again, a lot of people are split, obviously, because it is that idea of kind of an American-based white company. Even though telling wonderful stories like Coco, like Frozen doesn't really take place in Norway, but the Norwegian kids probably don't care too much. Most of them seem unbothered. Most of the beautiful, beautiful Norwegian people they bring over. It's that idea of like, I always feel like when I go in the China Pavilion and I see the like Oriental Trading Company like fans and things that you can buy there. What must it be like anyway for those people to come from their country as ambassadors? It is an ambassador position to sell, shitty trinkets to white tourists. It's one of those things. A lot of people also just want rides to be left alone. But you have people like me where I go, if an old ride isn't working or it needs a little life, let's update it within reason.
Right. I feel with I'm the same school of thought of that as that too. Like some things like are classic and should be touched, and then there's some things that they can go. Like they're not really putting any butts in seats. Like the 3 I keep crapping on that ride, but I'm like, it's not like a top 10 attraction.
They also don't advertise it at all. Like I did a college program in 2013, and it was halfway through my college program before I knew there was a ride in there.
Yeah.
Or in the Norway Pavilion, or in the Epcot Ball. I had no idea there were rides in any of these things.
Yeah.
And I'd been to Disney twice at that point. And so, I don't, I have, people have been talking about a Tangled taking over It's a Small World and getting rid of It's a Small World.
Whoa.
And as annoying as it is, I love It's a Small World.
It's part of it.
I love the Disneyland It's a Small World for getting the characters throughout. I think it's very cute. Yes. I would love to see an update of the Disney World one. I do think Tangled should have its own attraction more than a couple of stinky bathrooms and a PhotoPass spot.
And a small tower off in the distance.
That is like the worst. I'm sorry. That's like that movie gets dragged for that. Like, don't include it. Like, why does it just have a bathroom? Like, that's the worst attraction for such a good movie.
That was my favorite part of Tangled, when they go to the bathroom.
Yeah, that is a really good part.
I mean, and I get it when they were expanding New Fantasyland, when they were building New Fantasyland, and they needed Rapunzel wasn't there at all, but she was a huge part of what people were coming to the parks for, because it was just after her movie came out. But I think I would love to see another Fantasyland expansion that's got some Princess and the Frog things, that's got Tangled. I would love to get the Beauty and the Beast ride that Tokyo's getting for their new Fantasyland. There are just little things that every time I think they'll open an attraction, but I was like, the Beauty and the Beast aspects of New Fantasyland are flat for me now, almost 10 years after they've opened. It's a little, about almost 10 years since they've opened. But like Enchanted Tales with Belle is great. It's so much fun, but it's a long experience without a high guest pass through. Mm-hmm. So you end up waiting in line quite a long time for it. And there's no... And, Be Our Guest is a lovely experience, but like the meal isn't quantifiable to the money that you spend for dinner. Mm-hmm. Now, this is for everybody. Do the quick service lunch. I love the quick service lunch at Be Our Guest. It's lovely. It's quick. It's cheap in Disney money. But then to like just shove the Little Mermaid attraction over there, it seemed... Mm-hmm. It seems sometimes like when they do expansions, they do them and they lose money and like steam halfway through. And so things will change quickly, which, I can't pretend that I understand how the parks work in the grand scheme of a business aspect. But, just every time they go, oh, these things are coming, and then we get them and I go, well, that's fun. That was cute. But then we get Galaxy's Edge, which is one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in person ever. It's so brilliant. Mm-hmm. And does that amazing nonverbal world building. Like we talked about in Coco, the world building is so rich and vibrant, and they don't have to tell you anything about it in order for you to understand life. And they did the same thing with Galaxy's Edge. They did release a book and a comic series about it, but if you haven't read them and you haven't seen a single Star Wars movie, you can go and love your whole time there. My friend JJ, who works at Disney, is not a Star Wars person, and it's one of his favorite things he's ever experienced. Wow. Mm-hmm. And to me, he's one of the most knowledgeable people I know about the parks, like just from an aspect of Disney history, and he loves it. And so I think it's one of those things that if they keep doing that kind of richness and not rushing things, and granted, I know there's only so many things they can do, but we're now at such high attendance of parks that like, I don't want to wait 45 minutes for PhilharMagic. I don't want to wait 120. I will not wait 120 minutes for Haunted Mansion or Pirates of the Caribbean or Peter Pan. Mm-hmm. But I will say, when I went to Disneyland for the first time last year, I loved the old rides, some of those old rides like Mr. Toad, Snow White, Alice in Wonderland, Pinocchio. I loved those. Those were great. They were short, but like they were so much fun to do, and we don't have a ton of those left. And I know they're two very different parks, but for me, sorry, I am tangent. But yeah, no, I think you're always going to have people that are split. There are people who are like, never touch anything, just keep putting a fresh coat of paint on it and keeping it as it is, which to me is not logical for how entertainment works. Because at one point, Disney as a brand did want to close the film division and animation division and just focus on parks. But then you become a museum because you have nothing new to base anything on. Right. And so I do think the updates are important. I think the fact that we're getting a Tron coaster 12 years after the last movie, it's going to be flipping cool. I can't wait. But like, Tron was the first, it's Disney doing science fiction for the first time, not in Black Hole, but like Tron kind of got it right. And so I think those are those important things that I'm glad we have, that Disney can keep calling back to, or we can, they can make a Beauty and the Beast dark ride 30 years after the movie comes out, and it's fine. Nobody cares because it's still Beauty and the Beast. So I think change is inevitable and change is necessary at the parks specifically, especially if you're paying $150 a day with no park hopper. I want to get some shit out of it. Yeah, so it's a give and take thing. It's a give and take thing for me.
Yeah. So it's like we just went full circle because I feel like that's almost the story of Coco, like tradition versus change. Yeah. So, and like, that's just like, that's the whole thing. It's like there are traditions that we carry on, and then there are some things that we leave in our past, and then we have to make room for new things and new traditions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think holding on to the magic of what was before, but it's like anytime Disney does something, you go, well, Walt would turn in his grave. And I was like, you guys have to remember, Walt was first and foremost a businessman and a dreamer, but like the money was important. We went broke 3 times in his life because he made such big gambles with his money for these visions. But like he was also about making money. Like there was a time that most people don't remember that you paid to get into Disneyland, and then you paid per attraction. Like you had to have A, B, C, D, E tickets, which is why now they still use the phrase e-ticket attraction, because they would have been things that would have cost the most expensive ticket. And they were the big, the most in-depth rides, which we are now taking to a new extreme with things like Rise of the Resistance, which is worth getting up at 5 a.m. to go stand in line at the parks for. It's so weird that I can't talk about it enough. Yes, you guys should come visit, and we'll do it. It'll be fun. It's just a long day.
Yeah. I was there in October, and it wasn't open yet, so I'm super bummed out.
Oh yeah.
I haven't been.
Got to see everything else though.
I haven't been.
But it's. Oh really? It sounds like you guys getting come. Twister, it's just so easy to just come, drop some money and come to Disney.
I know.
I just helped 2 friends plan their honeymoon, and they had never been before, and so kind of walking them through, and I was like, the money is kind of be a ticket shock, but like if you get past it and look at what you're getting when you're getting the tickets and the resort and the meal plan and the experience, like. It's one of those things that, like, it is shocking, but the magic that you'll get from the experience is truly amazing, which is why I was so eager to come back and work for the company again. And kind of be part of that magic, because I can't explain it. And like, to me, the feelings I get watching Coco and experiencing it are the same feelings that I get when I go to the parks and I get to experience these things live, which is why I do think Coco overlay on Grand Fiesta Tour would be really cool.
Yep. I agree. Yeah.
Great. Well, any last thoughts, guys? This has been absolutely awesome having you on today.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I can't think of anything.
I feel
like
we covered everything.
So why don't you tell our folks at home where they can find you all and a little bit more about your podcast?
So you can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast. So we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, all the major ones. Just search Pod of Your World.
We're on Stitcher now too.
We're on Stitcher as well. You can also find us at Google Podcast. I mean, like I said, wherever podcasts are found, we're there. You can find us on social media at Pod of Your World. We're very active on Instagram. We're doing a lot of things on social as well as the podcast. We'd really love to engage with our community and like who's out there, like Disney fans, like. So, I mean, follow us. We're doing a bunch of different things.
Yep. We have a lot of free content on the way, a lot of surprises, so a lot to look forward to there.
Yeah.
That's
super exciting.
Kurt's a musician. I'm a graphic artist, so we kind of like to use our talents to embrace our love for Disney. And more lately with the podcast. So, so we share some of that with our community. But our podcast is basically just 2 guys who just love Disney, and we like to overanalyze every single thing. We have a bunch of games and segments we like to play on the podcast.
Yeah, a big part of our show has become this trivia segment called Name That Scene, where we play audio clips, and we usually bring a guest on. Rob competes against a guest, and they have to name the character and the movie the character's from. And Rob has a pretty good record.
Yep. I'm the queen of Name That Scene.
He's the queen.
The queen of Name That Scene.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you want to I'm afraid of Maddie, though, but if you want to come and challenge the queen, you are welcome anytime to come on.
Oh, it's on. Oh, bitch, it's on.
Okay. All right. Come for the queen. Yeah. That's like something that we really love doing is just testing our Disney knowledge, puffing our chest, and it's just all in good fun. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
we love that.
So,
well, guys, thanks so much. It has been an absolute blast having you on.
Yes,
yeah,
thank
you so
great
much
being on and getting to chat with you. And we love talking to Disney fans and especially talking about Coco, like that's just such a
It's the best. Yeah.
yeah. Often we talk about things on our podcast that we don't like, or like things that are like we'll read like sequels or like old straight to DVD things that are just not
VHS,
great.
yeah.
So yeah, some of that on there as well. But today we got to talk about
Talk about
Coco,
a good movie,
a
yeah.
good movie. Yeah. So
It's refreshing.
yes.
Hello, you wonderful human being. How do I know you're a wonderful human being? Well, if you're hearing this message, it means you're listening to a certain POV podcast, and that makes you awesome. Thanks for your support. This is Pat Edwards from the Let's Rewatch podcast, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm an author. My latest project is a new 5th edition D&D campaign book called The Red Opera. Inspired from the musical album and stage show of the same name, The Red Opera sends you on a twisting saga through dark and dangerous city teeming with intrigue, magic, death, and betrayal. And warlocks. This book is lousy with warlocks and all the mischief that comes with them. So here's what I need from you, you delightful slice of podcast listener cake. Go to the pre-launch page on Kickstarter and simply enter your email to follow the project. You're not committing to anything. You're just saying you'd like an email notification when the Kickstarter goes live, and then you can browse the truly outstanding reward tiers we've added to decide if you'd like to support the project. To find the pre-launch page, you can either go to theredopera.com, or if you go to my Twitter handle @thepatedwards, my current pinned tweet has a link. Again, thank you so much, you beautiful spoonful of human sugar. Love, Pat.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Dolewhip and Dreams Podcast. June is Pride Month, and we have a very special collection of Pride merchandise in our Teespring store. These items reflect many of the flags and colors under the fabulous LGBTQIA umbrella, and 100% of sales for June, July, and August will be donated to the Ali Forney Center in New York, the Center for Transgender Equality, and the Okra Project, which is a collective that seeks to address the global crisis Black trans people are facing today. And don't forget to use Dolewhip at checkout for free shipping on all orders. The Pride items are only available through the end of August, so get them now before they are sold out. You can also find a link to our website, Dolewhip and Dreams Pod, to donate to us directly, and those donations will go towards these groups. You can find out more about our show as well as all the amazing programming we have at certainpov.com. Engage with other dreamers like yourself and continue the conversation from today's episode online at Facebook at Dolewhip and Dreams Pod, Instagram at Dolewhip and Dreams, Twitter at Dolewhip Pod, and on the Certain POV Discord. You can find that link on the website. Thanks as always to the Dolewhip and Dreams crew of David White, who's our sound engineer and editor, our research assistant Angela Gwynn, and Brett Eagleston from the Let's Rewatch podcast for the music in today's episodes. Don't forget, COVID-19 is still ravaging the world, so don't forget to wash your hands and wear your mask. Now, may your days be filled with Dolewhip and dreams.
CPOV.
CertainPOV.com.